If you have tried out SteamVR on Linux before, you may have noticed that you can't control your base stations with Bluetooth like you are used to on Windows. And that's because SteamVR on Linux does not support the Bluetooth module inside your VR headset for some weird reason. I don't know, maybe a driver issue or something. And yeah, there's not much you can do about that. But what you can do is, if you have Bluetooth in your computer like I have on my mainboard, or if you buy a cheap Bluetooth dongle for your PC, you can then control the base stations like I used to on Windows. So it's kind of a workaround, kind of a hack, but yeah, it works for me. So as you might know, if I start SteamVR now, you will just notice, if it's starting up, that the base stations are yeah, not detected because they are not being turned on. And there's no option to like go into the Bluetooth settings here. It's just that it is just saying Bluetooth is not available. But yeah, the Valve Index that I'm using has a Bluetooth module inside, but sadly we can't use it on Linux. And the SteamVR client on Linux also cannot make use out of your existing Bluetooth module in your PC. So even if you have built-in Bluetooth connectivity, it's not possible to control it in the SteamVR GUI. That's why in this video I'm going to show you how you can work around this issue by using a tool I found on GitHub. I will leave a link in the description below so you can check it out yourself. So here we are on the SteamVR Utils for Linux GitHub page, and that's the best project I have found on the internet that allows us to control the base stations. And what's really neat about it is that it can you can launch it with SteamVR with a launch option, and that way when you close SteamVR again, the base stations will turn off. So it's pretty integrated and it feels just like on Windows, and maybe even better because you can fine-tune it to your liking, and I will show you what I mean later in the video. But first off, it works with base stations 1.0 and 2.0. And it also has a feature to change the audio input, because that is also not supported by default in SteamVR on Linux. But I have a better tool for that because this caused some trouble for me. So I haven't really used it much, and I just deactivated the audio changing part. But you can try it out, and if it works for you, even better. So you can check out this for yourself, but I will only talk about the base station feature. And as I've already said, you need to use Bluetooth low energy in order to control the base stations. And for the audio, you need to have pulse audio, and I have pipewire pulse audio, so the pipewire pulse replacement, and that seems to work fine, but in my case I have another issue with that, so I'm not going to go into that. So yeah, to use it you simply git clone the repositories. You can copy that if you want, and to do that you just open up your file explorer. In my case I'm already in my home directory, so you can git clone it here, but I don't really like that because it just creates a bunch of folders that I don't want in my home directory. So I made a separate folder called Utils. You can name it whatever you want, but that's just where I keep all my utilities that I get from GitHub or some other Git sites. So in here I have all kinds of tools, but in this video I'm going to focus on the SteamVR Utils. So to get that here, you just need to enter the command that you just copied from the page into the terminal. But to make it even easier, you just open the terminal from that path where you want to clone it in. So in this case, I'm already here now in the utils path here. And now I can just paste it in here. And that way, if I clicked enter and executed the command, I would get the folder in the directory I have chosen. And in order to do that, you also need to have Git installed. So yeah, depending on your distribution you are running, you need to install it via apt, or in my case via pacman. but that's not really an issue. It's a really small package. So just make sure you have Git installed to do that. Otherwise, you won't be able to clone it. So that's about that. So if you cloned it successfully, you should now have the SteamVR Utils folder right here or in your home directory. So you can go into that, and this is basically everything you need. So now we can continue on with this page. So you also need to make sure that you have all the necessary dependencies installed. So in this case, you need, if you are on Ubuntu or a Debian-based distribution, this should probably work right as it is listed here. So you need the Python 3 pip package and the libglib2 dev package. And you also need BluePy and PSUtil. But in my case, since I'm on Arch Linux, I had to install Python pip, I think it's what it's called. And also then Python pip to install, but it's a little bit different and it varies by distribution. So you just need to make sure that you can install the relevant dependencies that you need. The third line, sudo setcap and so on, is needed to run BluePy without the need to enter a root password every time you want to execute it. So that way you can just run it with SteamVR and it's flawless. So you should just enter that in the terminal. It should be distribution agnostic, but just make sure that the path here is actually pointing to your BluePy helper. And then you should be good to go. After you've done all of these steps, you should make sure that you edit the config file of the SteamVR Utils to get it to work properly. So to do that, you just scroll down to the configuration section right here. And the first thing you will need to do there is to make a copy of the template config file. So you can just go into the directory again. I will show it to you. So just open up your File Explorer again. And here you have the config folder. And if you go in there, you will only have the config template at first. So you just can copy it and rename it to config.yml. And after you've done that, you can just open the config.yml file, and then you can edit it. And it will have some descriptions on what you can do with these settings. But the most important one are on the base station tab, so you can enable it. Obviously, you want to have the base station component enabled, because that's the most useful and the most important in my opinion. And then you need to change the type of the base station that you have. So for me, I have the version 2 base stations, and that is also the default, so I didn't even have to change that. But if you're running the version 1 base stations, you need to change it accordingly. Then you have some other settings that I didn't touch, but then here you have the v1 base station settings. So if you have version 1 set here, you need to change some settings here. So you need to find out your Bluetooth MAC addresses of your lighthouses. And there's also another GitHub page linked for details on that. So unfortunately, I can't help you with that because I don't have version 2 base stations to test it with. But it should work. So if you just go on this GitHub page and read through it, you should be able to figure it out. And then there's also the audio section. And in this case, I just typed in false because I want to skip that and it cost me a ton of issues. So just to test it out, you can set it to false, and then you can test out the base station capabilities. And later on, if you want to make it work, then you can change it to true and change like your sinks and input and output devices. So I tried screwing around with all these settings, but I couldn't get it to work. And maybe because I'm using my speakers on HDMI and the index audio is also on HDMI, and that was an issue I couldn't figure out. So I just straight up told it to not do the audio part and just skip it altogether. So after you're finished editing your config file, you can also run this command to get additional help on the audio part. So I can show you how you can do that. You just copy this and go into your File Explorer again. Make sure you are in the main directory of your SteamVR Utils, and then open the console again, or the terminal. And then you just paste in this command, so it will correspond to the correct path. So it's in the scripts folder, and then here's the script, and here's the command config help. I will not run this command because, yeah, I just don't use the audio part. But if you want to do the audio part, you can get additional help on what some things in the config should be set to, and if everything is set up correctly to do the audio part. So yeah, after that you can continue and basically use the tool. So you can just start the script with the on or off command. So if you go into the terminal again, you can, instead of config help, you can just enter on, and then if you hit enter, you should see that yeah, it found your base stations and it's turning them on. And now I have my base stations that are turned on. So it's pretty simple if you have the V2 base stations. The V1 base stations could be a little bit more difficult to set up, but you should get it working. And if that does work, then you're basically good to go, and you can set it up to start with SteamVR. But before you can do that, you can also, or you should also test if you can turn them off. So you go into the commands, up arrow, and just type in off to turn them off again. And there you go, it found the base stations, and now they are turned off again. So that's pretty sweet. And now I will show you how you can make it so that when you start SteamVR, it will automatically start up your base stations. Alright, now into the final step. So to make it automated and to start the SteamVR Utils daemon every time you start up SteamVR, you just need to set some launch options in SteamVR. To get the launch options, you just run the install.py script. So it's under the install section. You just copy that and you go into the terminal again. Just make sure you are still in the SteamVR Utils directory, or you can cd, so change directory into there, or just open your terminal from the File Explorer again. And if you are here, you can just enter the command right here. It's /scripts/install.py. Hit enter. And after you have executed the command, the second line you get is the launch option that you need to set. So it even tells you where you can set the launch options, but I will show you that in a minute. So just copy that with Ctrl Shift C, or just copy with right click. And now you open your Steam, go into your library, and then you select or you search for SteamVR. I have the SteamVR beta because it's more recent, and yeah, especially for Linux, you want the newest fixes as soon as possible if they make some for Linux. But you go into properties here, and then here you have the launch options, and then you just Ctrl V in here, and that's basically all you need to do. Then if you close that out and now run SteamVR from the menu here on top, then you should now see that the base stations are turning on with SteamVR, and I can show you that in a minute. So now they are not detected, but after some time you should see the icons turning green. So I can already hear that the base stations are turning on. I will just cut it out. Oh no, I can see, yeah, you can see one base station and the other one is just too far away and not in the view of my headset, but they are turned on, they are green, so that's pretty cool, right? And now when you close SteamVR, you will have a delay. Oh, you can see the second is also now detected. So if you now close out SteamVR, it will close out, it will turn off the base stations to turn it into standby mode. So the blue light. But it will not be instant, it will take 60 seconds by default, and that is to make sure that you have enough time to restart SteamVR if it ever crashes, and on Linux it will crash, believe me. So 60 seconds is the default, so if you hit close here, it will take 1 minute and then the base stations will go into sleep. But if you want to change that, like I did, I set it to 15 seconds. So if you want to change that, you can also just go into the config again. I have showed you earlier. So you go into the SteamVR Utils folder again, config, and the config.yaml. And there, the last option is wait after quit. This is, I think, 60 seconds by default. But yeah, it also tells you why it is 60 seconds, because it's useful to prevent a power cycle. But I just set it to 15 seconds, so that's still enough time for me to restart SteamVR without the base stations turning off and on again. If you don't have Bluetooth built into your computer and don't want to buy a Bluetooth adapter, you can also use an Android app called Lighthouse PM, so Lighthouse Power Management. And what this does, it gives you a very simple application that lets you control your lighthouses with your Android phone that most likely has Bluetooth. And that's a pretty cool workaround. So I have used that before. I knew about the SteamVR Utils. The only negative is that it's only available on Android or not on iOS, at the moment at least. And it's also not as convenient because you need to pull out your phone and select each base station and turn it on one by one. So it's not that convenient, but at least it works. And yeah, if that's your only solution right now, then yeah, you can do that and it's not an issue. So you don't have to leave your base stations on all the time. You just control them with your smartphone. And it's also useful if you, for some reason, unplug your base station and replug it, and then it's on and you want to turn it off without turning on your computer to turn them off. So it's all in all a really useful application to have, and it's available in the F-Droid store as well, so that's pretty cool. There are also two projects I want to mention as well, kind of like honorable mentions, because those two also do work. And part of their code is used in the SteamVR Utils program as well. So there's Lighthouse Control by Wizard 2000, and there's also Lighthouse 2 Control by the same author. So these two are for your version 1 or version 2 Lighthouse base stations respectively. So if you have version 1 Lighthouse, you use Lighthouse Control, and for version 2 you use Lighthouse 2 Control. The only reason you would use those is if you don't want to deal with the audio stuff of SteamVR Utils, but you can just turn off that part like I showed you. Or if you want to use it in the command line only and do not want to have the daemon that enables you to run it with SteamVR. But I really like that feature, and that's why I recommend you use SteamVR Utils. But I will leave these two in the description below if you want to have a look. And maybe you will like these better, I don't know. But I found SteamVR Utils to be the best tool to fix something that Valve should have fixed themselves, because they advertise SteamVR to be compatible with Linux. But yeah, if even such a basic feature like starting and stopping your base stations is not possible, then yeah, that kind of sucks. But at least this way you can make it work, and that's pretty great.